What's going on? I got my notebook and everything.
It's
What up,
hilarious trying to
world, and
figure out
welcome to
mirror.
another episode of Black Nerd Fridays. I'm your host, Neal, and I got my co-host with me in the building. KinkySudz, what's going on?
What's going on? What's going on? How's
Uh,
everybody doing?
Man, and then I also got, the Mr. Refine himself, Mr. Black Nerd, Black Bearded Nerd. What's going on with you?
What's up? What's up, man? I'm ready to get into it.
So I'm gonna tell y'all, man, I'm doing like Rashad off of Earn Your Leisure. I had to get my notebook. All right, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, you know what?
I had to get my notebook. I had to, you know what I mean?
got my notebook too.
Oh,
Look
we
at
in
that.
there.
Here's mine. Oh, I like that research notebook. I like that.
Technology. Now here at Black Nerd Fridays, man, this is our first time going live on YouTube, Facebook, and also on Twitch. So shout out to everybody who will be joining or on the replay. Definitely make sure you leave comments. We will respond to them. I pose a question in YouTube about time travel, and we will get to that. But let's talk about Steins Gate, okay? And really, I literally just finished the last couple episodes at work right before I had to do training. And I was like, man, it took me for a loop. I really was like, I didn't understand why so many people love this show, this anime. And I'm like, I understand why. It literally just hits you. Tearjerker episode, I think it was like 15 or 16, where I was like balling up in my eyes, like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is just a lot of emotion, but not overplayed with it. So what I'm gonna do is, first and foremost, we're gonna get these names right, and I'm gonna let KinkySudz and I'm gonna let Black Bearded Nerd get the names right. We're gonna start off with the Mr. Protagonist himself, okay, Mr. Ha 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 ha. You know, I don't or Karen or Kieran. I don't know how you pronounce his name, but I'm gonna let KinkySudz and Black Bearded Nerd start off with it. So who is the protagonist? Who is the main character?
Oh man. Blackbeard nerd, I'm gonna let you go there. You start.
You want me to tell his name? His
name. Let's go with the name. We just
got like 6 of them. Let's get it straight. He got like 6 different names. You know what I'm saying? Hounen Kilma is the main one. The other ones would be Okabe. He got Okarin, and he has one. I forgot the last one, but he got a couple. Man, he got several different names. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yes.
And he is a mad scientist, I'm gonna say, but in my opinion, he's not. But yeah, there you go. That's the laugh right there. He's a mad scientist, they say. Yes. But he's dope, man. He's my guy.
And then our second main protagonist is what KinkySudz is dressed up as. KinkySudz, can you give the character's name and really just a little bit of, no? You can't get what?
I know I'm gonna
Christina,
mess it up.
And it's by the name which
I know. Right, exactly. But I mean, I know saying the correct way to say her name, I'm going to screw it up. But
go ahead.
Oh no, go aahead. I want to hear how you
got my notebook out. I told you I'm ready.
Yeah, I got mine.
Makizi, or we just know her as Christina, Miss Redhead herself. I mean, she is. When I say she
fireball.
When I say she's phenomenal, as far as intellect, she is just above and beyond. She loves what she does, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, go ahead. I gotta say, with her character, I thought she was a good balance and a good challenge to the main character.
Yes.
I thought that she, and I think it plays into really beautifully with the beer that I'm going to be drinking during this show. This idea about abuse of science. Although you can do it, doesn't necessarily mean that you should. So, and I like that she always challenged him on that. Like, really, what are you trying to do here? I get it, but
I'm glad you said ball of fire, because I got something similar. It's a ball of fire. Ooh. This is from Mortalis, Prometheus. So we kind of right on with that one. I ain't even expecting
nice.
That.
And nice. And I mean, and excuse my camera from shaking. I was still trying to get together. It wasn't working the way I wanted it to. But again, if this is on the replay, we're going to talk about. Make sure your camera's right and make sure you get here on time. But anyway.
Wait, is that a note for yourself? Is that a note for
definitely.
yourself?
Yeah, always. But I had to.
We were good.
Y'all was ready. Y'all was ready to go.
Was good.
Yeah, y'all was at the house. Y'all was good. You know what I mean? So I can't complain with that. So you got Daru, who's probably one of the most underrated protagonists in the show, but he is the hacker extraordinaire. He is what makes even Steins Gate even possible. And that's not even, Steins Gate is not even what I'm referring to, is not even what Daru was doing. That is what Mr. Mad Scientist himself was actually looking to achieve. and that is just a point of equilibrium with a different timeline, so that he did not make the past. He didn't change the past, but he made it look like, oh, we're gonna get to this.
Yeah,
made it look like he changed the past. So, we got that. We got his childhood friend, Mayuri, but she goes by Mayushi, and she is actually a Mayushi is actually a cosplay character. So this is pretty crazy. We also have Suzu, but her first name is not Suzu, but Suzu is a character that we're going to get into as well. I already knew who Suzu was and where she came from, so that was good. And I just didn't watch. When I finished everything, I was like, "Oh, this is fire!" Definitely, she is the part-time warrior, as they call her. You also have Moeka. Now, Moeka is her first name is like Kairyu, which is great because I can remember that because I was thinking Ryu from Street Fighter. But she is a character, wears glasses. I was just like, something's off with this character.
I like that glass. I like that glass.
I know, that's a nice glass right there. Beautiful glass. So, something was off with that character. We even have Mr. Baron or Mr. Baru. That's the shop owner for the TV repair. Or matter of fact, he does all repairs, not just TV.
He does a lot of repairs.
He does jack of all trades on that. So he's actually important towards the end of the show, which blew my mind. And that's one thing I love about this show. It just doesn't it gives you a lot of information with a lot of the characters. It makes you think that one character is one way, and it just really just turns around and slaps you in the face, and you're like, I don't even know what happened. You also have and I wrote that name down too, Rokua. Maybe I'm getting his name right, or is it a he? And we're talking gender wise, from the look, but not sex as far as male or female. So that character.
I mean, the timelines with that one was pretty interesting though, but I'll wait till we get to a little bit later on that one.
Yes. And then you also have the character Ferris, Mrs. Meow herself, another cosplay person who actually we'll talk about a little later, is the city is her family's city. So that blew my mind too, and the amount of money that she comes from. But we'll talk about a lot of what this show is really about the human emotion, and also with the whole aspect of Steins being a time travel suspense show. It's really pulling at that aspect of selfishness, which I wrote down and took notes on, is like, what is selfishness? It also talks about control, of course. So you see control, but you don't see it in the way where it's like, I am the main antagonist and I'm going to control you. Now, the overall antagonist is Saren, or if I pronounce that correctly, SERN, and they're actually an entity. They're like a conglomerate, but you don't know who is in there. Now, the character who KinkySudz is dressed up as, the cosplay that she's doing, you get the first sense of the show actually in the first couple of episodes, dealing with Miss Part-Time Warrior, that you get a sense that, wait a minute, okay, Christina, as the mad scientist likes to call her,
right,
is definitely tied into Saren, and it's some friction between the Part-Time Warrior and Christina, and we'll get to talk about that as well. But we also have so I went over on Ferris, if I got her name correctly, so Miss Akiba, that's one character. We went over Rokua, whatever. What is his name?
Rokuka. That's Rokuka.
Yeah, Rokuka.
But shortly is Ruka.
Yeah, so Ruka for short. So these, and they all have different membership numbers, like number 1, 2, or whatever. Like your lab member number 3 or 4.
Yes.
But the show really revolves around the aspect of time. You have Mr. Mad Scientist himself, whose name I always get incorrect. O'Karen is what I'm gonna call him, even though it's probably not that. He is a man who seems like, and he's not super old. So the show makes it seem like it has this older, younger man, woman type of feel, but reality is that he was in elementary school, and I think it was in 2000. So he's not even that old. He's just tall for his stature compared to all the other characters. And even Daru is not as old as you suspect, because a lot of this, it does hit with a lot of sexual harassment jokes that that was in 2000. This show was in 2010, 2011. So just compared to now, it's just like, oh yeah, that's not flying at all.
I mean, you could tell based upon the technology, the cell phones. When you look at the
I was going to say the TVs, the cell phones.
The TVs were old, and then like you're saying, to piggyback off what you're saying as far as the relationship and sexual harassment wise, right? When you're looking at those two characters, you see a lot of things that Okaran is doing, but he's not really sexually harassing because they are very close in age, all of the characters, but you don't realize that until later on in the show.
Right, when they start to talk about the age. And I just thought it was interesting how, I feel like his team kind of helped him to break out of like this I got blinders on, I'm only focusing on this, right? So like a lot of times he was oblivious to things, and and there's a couple of scenes, of course, they all do it with fan service type of stuff, but when those things would happen, he was always just like, like, this typical anime, like, and which I always crack up on when they do those properly, but it was just funny watching him struggle with that. I'm like, dude, you are coming up with like ways to time travel with your team, and you're freaking out because you see a little bit of leg or a little bit of boob. Like, what's going on, man? Come on, man.
Crazy. Like, you get a mixture of all that sort of stuff.
Definitely.
Like
so
with sexual harassment, from the mixture of him being quote unquote a pervert and all that stuff, and you tie it in and you find out that's not the case. But Okaran was an interesting character to say the least.
So Okaran is a character who, again, he loves science. As a kid, he watched this mad scientist show. He wants to be the mad scientist. He wants chaos, and he's always talking about the organization. The organization is out to get him. The organization wants to take over the world, and he's like an anti-hero in his mind. And really the tale of the anime is that he is thrust into, at least in the beginning, the first episode, he's thrust into a situation where he sees Christina's character dead. And again, this show's been out a very long time, so it's going to be all spoilers, hands down. And this character is dead, and he hears a scream. And that scream is important, actually, because that scream times into, again, time. For everyone watching on the live and then on the replay, if we're talking about time travel, someone hears a scream, you can already kind of imagine of how this circle is going. Hint, hint. So he goes up, he sees Christina's character, and he's like, blood, it's all over the place. And this is actually a character who's a scientist, Christina. She is probably one of the most intelligent scientists when it comes to this aspect of neurology, the mind. And he is just like, wow, I've seen her before. She's dead. And he's running out. And before you know it, it's like the screen just goes. He's like, he sees his phone, the screen just shakes or whatever. And he literally is like in isolation for a moment in the city. The city is just empty. And he's like, what the hell's going on? He's thinking he's daydreaming. And then it's like he gets thrust forward into his body, and he's talking to his childhood friend, whose name I got to get these names right, but his childhood friend, who is like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "I'm good." And then he realizes that he's actually back from the start before the day even got started. And so this is a telltale story of like time travel. And it's not time travel in the sense that we think, which I really enjoy, because when Black Bearded Nerd and I did Erase, which is a show that really took a lot from Steins Gate, even with the blue butterfly when time happened, time travel happened, and everything. See, I'm getting to. I was paying attention. It really showcased a lot of what Steins Gate did for time travel and suspense type shows. So literally the whole show is about this the Mr. Mad Scientist Okaran, it really going through and trying to understand why am I going through this? Why is this person dead? And like the first couple episodes, the only thing he's focusing on is actually the first two is like, I can't let this person die. So this person doesn't die. He builds a relationship with Christina, and this is the name he calls her, our Chris Cruz, whatever other nicknames he gives her. My favorite nickname is Shining Finger, but we'll get to that character. He literally is just building this friendship, this bond with someone who is in love with science at a level that he would love to be at, that he doesn't get to until later on in into the series. But the only reason you know about that is because of what happens throughout the series, and he gets kind of hit with seeing himself in the future, and that is one key thing. And really, the main point of this show is like be isolated, and on top of that, dealing with the fact that the people who are there around you that are always seeing you every day are the most important to you. And that if you take a moment to step back and see what it is that you have, then you can build even greater things because now you have a solid base. And what Ocarin was not seeing, and again, the reason why he wasn't seeing that is he had some childhood trauma, as the show just shows a whole lot of trauma.
All kinds of trauma,
he was just like, he was like, I just want to be alone. He really didn't want to feel pain. So that pain of not really caring or loving someone because of what he had, what issues that he had. And I don't want to give, I'm a spoiler alert, but not every single thing, because we'll be here all day. But he really had him and Mayushi. They really had a moment to where Mayushi's grandmother passed away. And it almost seemed in the way that they showed it is like she was really reaching for the light. And it was almost seeming like, to the Ocarin's point, that she was going to just disappear, like heaven was going to take her and then he would be alone. So he grabbed her and said, I never want you to leave. He was like, from the show as a kid, the only thing coming to his mind is like, I'm a mad scientist and I've captured you and I've kidnapped you and you can never leave me. And it was really just a moment of the way that he felt from the trauma that he had as a child. Now, I'm gonna stop talking after this because I'm gonna pose a question. I need to do that with in the comments too. Is that with Ocarin and with just the show in general, what moment for you all did you just get that this show was solely about him, even though it had so many other things coming into play? And I'll go with KinkySudz.
I was gonna say she go first.
So I think honestly, when you're thinking about how he was really animate about what he found and what he thought was his theorem, so to speak. I know from my own experience as a scientist, like when you've come across something, you're like, hey, I want people to know about this, right? Like this is something big. Because you're like, I'm looking through all these papers, I've done all the analysis and everything. You're like, look, I want people to look at this. But I think just the idea for him of not just wanting to be alone, but the whole idea of let's really push the envelope and see what I can do, right? Like that's, and I think it's interesting as a scientist, when you're trying to uncover things about the world, there's always a question of, when you uncover it, what do you do with it? Right? Like when you figure that out. And we all have talked in various conversations alone or with our friends, right? Of just this idea of, if you could travel through time and change things, would you? And I really like that concept of that, because every time he was like, oh, I did this, it worked. Well, what happened? And you start to see all the fallout from it. And every time, like you said, he didn't want to be alone. So every time something happened to another character on the show, he was like, I need to fix it, right? So he kept going further and further down this rabbit hole, which I thought was insane. And so, he kept causing more and more fragments throughout the timeline, right? So it's like you have this abuse of science, right? Where it's like, where he's like, we've uncovered this thing of being able to time travel. I was able to send a message back in time, but it caused so much trouble for him. So he was already not wanting to be alone. And then when he came across this novel thing in science, it screwed up everything in his life. And he's like, my whole mission now is just to try and fix this. And in the same time, as he was trying to save people, he was pushing people away. So he was literally causing more harm to himself and causing more troubles for himself, in the sense of, I don't want people to leave me, but I'm pushing people away in order to get to this, right? So I thought it was really interesting. It kind of reminded me of the movie with Ashton Kutcher, Butterfly Effect.
Oh, yes. I was thinking
took the words out of my mouth.
Every time he tried, it always got worse.
Yeah.
And there's just always this idea that it ripples through time. So whatever you change will ripple through time. And so it always begs the question I've always felt is, do we really have free will? Because if you want to go back and really change something, but it leads to this drastic change in the end, and you don't like the end product, it's like, well, you're forced to still go with that first decision that you made, or whatever decision you made that you're in that timeline. But I'll save that tidbit. But it just, for me, it was just that part of, he tried to show what he did. He was very excited about it. He wanted to be revealed, be viewed as a renowned scientist. But in the end, it still cost him everybody that he really cared about. So
I think that was important too, because to me, I felt as though he was a person that was alone at first. But when you realize that he actually cared about the original lab members 2 and 3, which was Daru and Mayushi, and as time progressed, he added more lab members. But when you realize that he needed all of them as a collective and all of them as a support system, he didn't want to be alone anymore. He didn't want to be just known as the mad scientist, all that. He wanted that support. He wanted that love from the people that he called friends. And he kind of realized that later on when I think it was the guy at the end, what's his name? The Braun, when he mentioned to him something about it, that you have these people around you and you realize their significance. And I actually enjoy that part the most, because as humans, we all like our solidarity, we all like our peace and stuff, but we realize we need other people around us, whether it makes us good or bad. But that normally makes us better because we are social creatures. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. And I definitely think that they could have taken that storyline just like so much farther based upon all those ripples and stuff like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. One of the things that really hit about this show, and for y'all watching and on the replay too, make sure you want to leave some comments and ask us questions. We can respond back to it and even come back to Steins Gate later on, because it's such a, it's 24 episodes. So this hour that you're getting is really just going to condense it, but we really hit into the humanity, the social structure of things, but it didn't even, the society as a whole really didn't even fit into the anime. It was solely focused on people and what they're going through. And one of the things about Okarin, and hopefully I'm getting his name right.
You're getting closer each time. Each time you get
closer. One of the things that I really enjoyed about his character is that every single character that was around him, even the quote unquote antagonist of Siren, this entity, understood that he was a good person. And that to me is, it was crazy because he just didn't believe that. He didn't want to be a humble person. He wanted to live up to this moniker of a mad scientist because it made him have armor on, and he didn't have to deal with the reality that he did care about people, and he really wanted them to be around him and need him just as much. And I think that was great. One of the other things that really got to me with the show is that the characters Ferris, Ruki, and then also with Moeka, who again, one with glasses, who's again very interesting character, and we can talk again about isolation and her point as well, is that each one of them were making decisions about what they wanted to change in the past that can either make them feel comfortable or would bring them from not being isolated. So for Ferris, who was the call her Meow because she was always in cosplay with cat gloves or something like that. Very intelligent too, though, at the same time.
Which was hilarious to me.
Very intelligent. The games that they played, I thought it was like chess, but it was probably something even beyond
similar to that, but further than that. Definitely.
But she's just like known, we're not even just talking about in Japan where the show is located, but even also in the other episode, the last 13 minutes where they did an extension of the show. She was in LA at the Staples Center and like had all of the Japanese guys who live in the United States were like, oh man, she is just fire. But with her, she wanted to change time. And the way that they also, a lot of these characters got to find out about time travel using D-mail, which I thought was great. That in itself is like Okarin just didn't know when to be quiet. Like he literally had his windows open, he had the door open, and he would just
that was the thing that got me about that.
He just would have conversations about like literally Daru. He has Daru hacking into like government facilities where they are literally testing time travel, and he's like just speaking as casual as he wants to, with all the windows open. But before I get into that, before I get into more characters, what do you all think about how they use the bananas in this show to signify this aspect of that the physical body of something could not travel through it. It was the way they mention it in the show is that the governments that were looking at time travel was like they were utilizing a black hole, and they were trying to force like a huge object, a full person, through this black hole that was compressing over time. And it was like, this is crazy. And the way they did it, and especially when they found out that they were doing human experiments, was like, it was amazing. And again, this is where she shined in the shows, because it literally took her minutes. I mean, we're talking spans of like, sometimes in the show it'd be 30 minutes an episode, but we're talking about anywhere from a 2-day, 3-day type of thought process. Even she would like not sleep, and she would just come up with these great things, these ideas that were like, oh man, this is amazing. And I was like, she literally laid out this green banana aspect. And when she saw it, she was like, this is just amazing. Like, how did this, the gelatized banana really, what did it make you all think when y'all first saw it? I'm gonna go with a black bearded nerd first. Like, what did you think about that? Like, what did the show do for you?
First off, I'm like, is that microwave? Like, is it just rotten? Is it
exactly
bad, etc.? But at the same time, I was thinking, okay, if they're doing time travel, right, maybe something happened in time that caused it to age super fast, whatever. But we realize that's not the case. We realize that you're trying to fit something into a small hole, so you're going to lose all the important parts, and all you're left with is just the gel or the guts of it, right? But the funny aspect of it is that sexual innuendo that they had when it was, put this banana into the hole and stuff like that, and the things that they're saying, and you have like like all those little intricacies happening, and everybody's taking it the wrong way. But it was deep to watch her use that, right, and translate that into a quick theorem to translate messages backwards and translate things. Instead of you physically going back, you're mentally going back, putting the memories back there. That was
I think the other thing to build upon that was the idea of, of course, anytime you think about going back in time, you would like to yourself go back. So I think about the one movie where the young girl was trying to go back in time to save her brother. And it was about the young black girl who's going back to try and save her brother, who was killed by the police. And she and her friend figured out how to do time travel. I cannot remember the name of that movie.
Me either.
But it was interesting thinking about, physically speaking, one would want to go back in time, right? But if you weren't able to, and you had to figure out a way to send a message to your previous self, or somehow to inform yourself, the way she went about breaking it down and saying we had to do a message, but there was a catch. It had to be a certain length, right? Like you had to get all the information you needed in a short amount of time. I was like, oh, it's like Twitter. You got 140 characters. You got to.
That's exactly what I thought. That's exactly what I thought with D-Mail. That's exactly what D-Mail is. It's just a time traveling Twitter to show you.
Right. And I just thought it was so interesting, because then it comes down to, because someone had posed this question before, if you could tell yourself something in 7 words, what your past self, what would it be? Right. So you have to start thinking, and this is the thing, when you send that message back in time, you have to think about, who am I sending it back to, and what's their thought process? Because you may have an inside joke, like with your significant other or with your best friend. So you can cut out a lot of words, and they would be able to piece things together to be like, oh, I see what you're trying to say, but it would sound like gibberish to anyone else who's reading it. And they're like, I don't know what the hell this is. But you're thinking back on a time with who you're sending it to and the time you're sending it, right? That really helped jog their memories about stuff. So I thought that was really cool, because it wasn't where you had this unlimited power to be able to go back. There weren't any consequences, and you were able to physically go back and change things. It was like, no, you got to play within the rules. And if you were to do this, this is the way you do it. But you have to be very smart about it and calculate it. And I love that piece. And also the fact that it was a woman who figured it out. Just saying.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty cool.
But let me add that into there, right? So if you're thinking about the most important thing that they sent back, one of the first things, Rokuka, aka Ruka, sent the message to the mom: eat vegetables instead of meat and vegetables, because you wanted that translation, right?
Oh man, that was crazy.
So you add that in there, and then you have to think about this. remember when he sent the message back to himself, and it was, I mean, not back to himself. Yeah, it was back to himself, but it was to inform what's her name? The redhead girl. My Yuri had to inform her.
Christina.
Christina. Yeah, we can go Christina. Had to inform her, and where her thought process was at the time was, I'm worried about a spoon. I have my fork. Where's my spoon at? That right there was very interesting. So you have to calculate all that when you decide to send things back, because your mind state might not understand the message, the coded language that you're trying to send back to yourself. So they was able to do that and interpret that into how the person can understand what it was. So that was dope.
I thought that was so dope, because I mean, it really, it makes it, like I said, it makes it where you have to be very calculated, because when they made the initial change, a lot of things had happened. And I loved how they showed at the beginning of each episode, like the different lines, the timelines that broke out of it. Yeah. Right. And as each episode progressed, they started to kind of like compress onto themselves to say, hey, look, we're only 1 away instead of 5 away. And it was really interesting because, you know, each, like in the beginning, each time they would try to fix it, it got worse. And it was like, wait, and then they're like, wait, we need to stop and think about exactly what did we do to get it back to at least this part here. So again, it was being very calculated and figuring out how do you change things back. But I've always thought it was really interesting that when you split off into time, like, so they always talk about the multiverse. We've heard a lot of about this in Marvel, right? Where you have the multiverse theorem. We hear about it in our own real space about this idea that there are multiple universes. Rick and Morty has talked about this, right?
Said it, yes.
And in Rick and Morty, they had the ability to be able to look at it through these goggles, so you could see what your life looks like across these different universes.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was interesting because it's like, if you could peer into those other timelines and see where your life is, would you try to change it to get to that, to say that, oh, okay, this is my timeline now looks like this, right? But I think it was really interesting. They were talking about this, like, you really fragmented the timeline, and it really comes down to, you have to keep everything in line, right, to get it back to where it was. But it was like, you have to really pay attention to what were the key steps that made the decision to get to that. And I just thought that that was just beautifully done, how they did that. And I think, and I don't know, because the way that they talked about time travel and this makes me think that they probably consulted with someone, because they really went into some details. I was just like, a lot of Hollywood movies don't even try to go into this detail, right? And I think personally, it's just really interesting to see how they went about doing it. That, to me, I just thought was so cool. I was like, the nerd in me was just like, ooh, this is so good. And they're so fucked, but like, it was just really good.
What I did enjoy about that science aspect is literally the creators of this anime really took time to go into depth. They use a lot of real life examples of like the aluminum foil type mechanism that they were using to try to set up a experiment with time travel. But one of the things that you mentioned as far as technology, I love how this show really focused on, it used cell phones. It used an old school, the IBM 5100 portable computer. I mean, that thing was a monster.
60 pounds probably.
Yeah, and it really, but what it really did not go outside of that. It was very your calculation, and I think they use technology in that sense too, because technology, I mean, especially now where people are like, oh, AI and all these things are going to take over and what have you, as far as people losing jobs and things of that nature. At the end of the day, technology is only what you put into it. And you have to be very precise on what you put into it, because I don't know if you've ever taken a class where you had to do programming, or just literally like when I like, especially working in the food industry, when you're really programming just the basic thing for literally a machine to blow air into a bag to put your product in it. It's not just I press one button and it happens. No, you have to give what is the dimensions of the bread?
Yeah,
what is the, you know what I mean? Like, you have to do all these things so that the computer can just go off of the sensor to be like, okay, bam, that's there. I'm putting it in, I'm done. And what I love about this show is that with Okarin, when he's constantly on his phone talking about the organization, and then Siren, and he's constantly like, they're after me, they're changing this and that. It's also something that a lot of things that he feels in the inside, he uses technology to express it, even though he's not talking to anyone. So that was great. But to jump forward to the characters and how a lot of the decisions that they made really affected the timeline for Ferris, her decision to not have her father get on a plane that is very significant to the whole show. Again, these little tidbits that if you're not paying attention to the show is like, what is going on? Her decision to say, Daddy, don't get on that plane or something of that nature. He doesn't get on the plane and he's alive, and her whole world is totally different. She really erases a lot of the things that with the money that she had when her father passed away, that she utilized to make the maid shop or to do certain things where it's like you have a whole bunch of just cuteness, what she calls all over Aqaba City, if I pronounced that correctly. And that was crazy. The one with Ruka, but Ruka, when he all for gender wise, when he was like, I want to be a woman, and on the sex wise too, like the genitalia, it was crazy because they constantly show, and Japanese anime does this a lot, where you have this pretty boy, and I forgot what they call him in Japan, because you've seen, like, if you watch Anthony Bourdain, No Reservation, when he was in Japan, and a couple other things where they literally have these guys that look that are dressed up or look better than the women, or they look like a woman, and you're just kind of like, it's always funny to hear Okurin like, that's so cute, but he's a guy. And it's like,
my God.
It didn't even, and I wanted to talk about that, how it touched on to this aspect of, like, at that time, 2011, having transgender in the mainstream or people understanding that was not prevalent in that level. So to constantly, especially Japanese anime doing that, is to constantly to have this character who literally is like, Okurin, I like you as I have feelings for you, but I know that because I'm a man, you're not going to have these same feelings for me as you do. So that I'm going to send this D-mail to my mom which trips everybody out, because they were like, oh snap, it really worked. To eat more vegetables, not more protein, so you can have a girl. Like, and then come out to girl, and then Okurin's like, no, you're a guy, you're a boy, and she's like, no, she's crying. Like, it was crazy. So can we talk about that dynamic real quick? Yeah,
that whole conversation cracked me up, because it was like they changed. He changed into a girl,
literally,
and he was just like, as much as I think that you're pretty, I still remember you from my original timeline as a boy. And it's two things. See, I watched this first, and it made me think of a movie that I'd seen before it, called The Crying Game, where it was a guy, he saw this woman who he thought was a woman, and they go back to his place.
Yeah, as a guy,
and he was like, and everybody talks about this scene. He's like, oh, and he's like, I liked you better as a girl, right? Yeah. And it was just this idea of that, right? But the other thing that made me think of was in Black Mirror, where you had the two black guys
playing video games.
They were playing roles where one was a girl, one was a guy.
Yeah.
And you go, I know you're a guy, but you're a girl in this game. I thought
that was the mindset that was about to happen when
right?
I was like, I mean, she's a female now in gender and in sex. So
I was thinking, like, so I had seen Steins Gate before I saw Black Mirror, and so when I watched Black Mirror, I was just like, oh.
That's what they.
And so maybe it just made me think about it, because it's like, in an alternate universe, you might actually be the opposite. Like, if there's really this idea of a multiverse, which scientists are saying that it is, that you could be a different gender, and you have to feel like, I always laugh at this. I'm like, I wonder what I would look like. But now we get the option with some of these filters where you can actually see yourself as a boy if you're a girl versus if you're a guy, see yourself as a girl. And the technology is getting insane now that you can, like, they really make it look good. And I did it for myself, and I was cracking up, because I was just like, I would get a lot of ladies because I looked pretty good as a boy. But I was just thinking, like in this scene, that he was still based, and he still had all the knowledge from his timeline. And that's the thing about it. Like, he wasn't going to these other timelines without that previous knowledge. So what happened to this person. So like if they died in a previous timeline, but they're alive in this one, you're like, I witnessed you die. Yeah. But you're alive here. Or you were a boy in the timeline that I was in, but now you're a girl. And my body is responding in a way that I'm like, hey, remember, it was a boy. So it was just really interesting that they were tapping into this, because it really got into this idea of if you're able to peer into the other universes, or even be a part of those other universes, right? A part of you wants to really try and explore, like, what's different, how different is it, and what has happened here. But he was solely focused on getting back to his original timeline, that he was like, as much as I find you interesting and I would love to see that, I can't, because I got to get back to my timeline. So I just thought that was interesting, that he was like, the body says yes, but the mind is saying focus on the prize. I just thought it was like, that's what I thought.
I got another good one for you. Remember when Suzu came back, right? Now, what does Suzu remind you of? Because you got to remember, Suzu's coming from 2036. That reminded me of the Terminator now. Yeah. When I'm thinking of Terminator,
go ahead. I knew you was going to say that. I knew you was going to say that.
The decisions you make, you're going to have Skynet, and Skynet to me is CERN. That's how I'm interpreting.
But it wasn't AI. Robots, it was people.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Which is worse at some point.
Yeah. So she goes back and she understands who possibly did things to her in the future. Now, if you remember that aspect, that ties into FB later on.
Yes.
Was the main protagonist, right? Excuse me, antagonist. And that also ties into a lot of other things that she might have said, okay, I took care of this person when they were younger, or I fed this person, I did this and that. And her role was huge. And I was like, yo, that's dope that they were able to relate all these things and make it stay present.
I know we sound like we're jumping all over the place. So again, in the comments and on the replay, like if this shows Steins Gate, if you're like, what the hell is going on? Again, we're talking about 24 episodes of back and forth. Everything is tied in together. Every action is not only a reaction, but every action literally is like this person and this person are in alignment to what your one action did. And one of the things, what I like about Suzu is that the weekend war, the part-time warrior, is she was about that action.
Yes,
she was about taking action, and she even said is like, when something doesn't make sense, I just take action. And one of the things that Okarin, where I was highly, it was not upset. It was just like, come on, if you don't see that Mokia or Mokea, if you don't see that the woman, Kairu with the glasses, if you don't see that something's not right about her, and like she's asking you questions and she's literally finding you, and it's like she's watching her, by the way. I was like, if she's watching you, then how do you not get that? And I think a lot of things, because of his blinders, exactly, because of his blinders, he literally was not able to pick out little things. He was so focused on the organization getting him, or Siren, but he kept pushing forward. And that's one thing I did like about that. When it came to the aspect of taking down an organization to be the anti-hero, he was steadfast in his decisions. It wasn't until later on to where he saw Mayushi, when she died, that really hit him hard, because he was like, this is a person who I'd never wanted to leave me. Like, this is my last tether to humanity. And that really showed into play when he had to jump multiple times. Because before, when he was just using the D-mail, it was okay. I send this text message, this happens, okay, I can fix it. Then we get into Christina's character, who, again, her name not Christina, but that's what Okarin called her, is that she literally she literally sits down and she said, I think with Siren, the problem that they're having is that they're looking at taking the physical body and sending your physical body back in time. But she said, what if it's just your memories? And I was like, oh, this is fire. I mean, this is every time traveling suspense show is just done right.
Like, think about that's why they actually came back to the past to take them, because they were the ones able to do that. So in 2036, they had created that program that allowed them to use it on whoever and whatever. That was the crazy part. So they went back, they killed Mayuri, and then they ended up taking Christina, and they took Ocarin, and they took Daru. So they transported them to the future. You hear on 2036, they are responsible for a lot of different things. That other crazy part that I noticed was Daru was the father to you know who.
Yeah, it's a Suzu.
That was crazy. I'm like, yo, where did that come from? And then he's asking questions like, how did the mother, like, I hope she got big boobs and all this stuff.
Yes.
And who do you think is a mother for Suzu? And who's Daru's wife? Who do you think?
I honestly.
And while you think about that, shout out to East Brother Brewing Company with the Heretic collab right here. It is a Indian pale lager. I'm gonna get my zoom in right. So this is really good to start off. I also got a whole bunch of other stuff while y'all looking. And again, Black Nerd Fridays, we like drinking beer and we like talking anime, comics, sci-fi, movies, and all that. So of course you're gonna see, this. We get into the sponsorships. We also got the East Brother. I got this good old Freight Series Russian Imperial Stout. This is a 10.5 ABV. Can't wait till that one goes. I'm not going to drink the other stout, but then I had to get some growlers to show support to what East Brother's doing, trying to keep this Lighthouse bed and breakfast going. So this is a 32 ounce. This is the Belgian style triple, which I'm going to open 8.6 ABV. And last but not least, because I told myself we're going to hard line it. Well, actually, maybe today we're not going to hard line it. Next week, we definitely gonna hard line it to an hour because we got a whole bunch of other stuff to get to. But this one right here, this is the English Strong 7.5 Strong Ale. So I can't wait to crack this open as well. So we like to drink out here at Black Nerd Friday. Shout out East Brother, holding me down.
Who do you think the mom is?
Who do you think the mom is? So back to the topic. I think I'm gonna open the Strong Ale first too. Then I'll go for the triple.
I'm going with Ferris.
You think so?
I'm going Ferris.
You think Ferris?
Mm-hmm.
I'll put it like this. Look at the color of the hair.
But see, a lot of times you can't tell from that.
And that may mean nothing, but it's down to two people. It's down to Mayushi and it's down to Moeka.
Moeka.
That's two people it's down to.
You already see what happened to Moeka.
Huh?
Yeah.
You already see what happened to Moeka. Moeka is done.
She's not done. She lived. Yeah, she lived. You talk and see that, and that's a good thing about this show.
That's that timeline thing.
This is why this show is so good, is because you have to really. It's not even just really pay attention. It's like they will hit you with like, wait a minute, is that person dead? Are they alive? Like, but again, she never at the time Suzu didn't know who her father was because she never met her father, and it was Mayushi. Who was like, oh, FG204? That sounds like it's like gadget number whatever.
Yeah.
And she found out that Suzu was Daru's daughter. But then I was always thinking in my mind, I always thought that Mayushi, Okarin's childhood friend, I thought she was the mother. So it's between her, which I really think it is between her and Moeka, because they just, again, the subtle quietness, you would never guess it. That's the whole thing. That's what I like about it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm gonna try to report this up, but
I'm going with Ferris still.
Yeah, go with Ferris. Hey, could be though, because the hair color match or whatever don't mean nothing. You know how jeans be.
Yes.
I guess. And then in anime, they always, they always try to go with something different too, right?
Always.
But part of me, I kind of like the idea of not knowing who she was.
Yeah.
Because I think that in itself, when you think about what you're able to know about the future, that can heavily influence what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. So part of me was like, I like the fact that they didn't say who it was, because they just went through this whole thing about if you were able to send back a message to warn yourself what can happen, right? So I just thought it was really interesting. It's like, no, let's not know.
I love how she said, I'm gonna lead that a secret, Dad. You're gonna figure it out for yourself.
That's exactly what she told you. Figure it out.
Right? But so you talked about your beers. I showed mine, Abuse of Science. But this, I didn't tell you the style. It's an Imperial IPA.
Okay, Imperial. I got you.
So we're talking at least 8% here.
Okay, what do you think the ABV is?
Probably if it's an Imperial IPA, probably say like 9.5.
Both of you are incorrect. It is 11.
Oh, okay. That was gonna be the next one.
Yeah, but they cheated us. If they would have said like triple, then we would have known. Like, you know.
No. But I love this, and I know we always talked about in regards to when we talk about anime, we always talk about the aspect of what it's like from a black perspective.
Yeah.
And I just want to put this out there, this one piece. When I was thinking about, in particular, time travel, as a black person, someone had posed this question to me before. Would you want to travel back in time, or would you want to travel to the future? And I thought to myself, as a black person, traveling back in the past can be deadly. And a part of me would like to see where we're able to get to as a species, right?
Yeah.
And then I also thought about it too, because, you know, Dave Chappelle did the famous skit where he went back in time. Everybody talks about that one, and it always cracks me up when you think about it. Where you can go back in time and you'd be like, but that's the only way you would want to go back in time, right?
Yeah.
You also have to ask the question, if you were to do something like that, what would be the implications? And I think this is what Steins is really getting at.
Yes.
You may want to go back in time and say, I know the atrocities that have happened, but if I were to do that, what would happen? Right? Because you're able to go back, right? You're able to go back to your time. However, the people during that time cannot. So whatever you've done to kind of like feel like you've given some type of justice in some way may actually end up causing a very severe stronghold to come down in some negative way, where when you get to the future, you're like, what the hell do you mean black people are still enslaved? When you get back to your timeline because of what you did, right?
Yeah.
So as much as we like to joke about it, but I'm like, a part of me is thinking like, I don't know, like, I mean, and for you two, how do you guys feel? Like, you know, if you had the ability to go forward in time or backwards in time, what would you choose?
I'm a mix between both. I would lean towards the future. Going back would be a lot on me. One of the reasons why I say it's a lot is because we have that negative aspect of not knowing where we come from. Like, I don't know who I might be related to, who's this person, that person, and we might end up being able to say, oh, the brother and sister were my great grandparents, that sort of thing. You might not want to know that, right? So I'm going to go forward. I'm going to go forward and see what's going on. Because you got to remember, we're separated off. So they might have sold this person off on this plantation, and you don't know that's your sibling or your cousin. And then later on you link up, and then you have family, etc. So I would say I go forward to see our progresses and advances in society, as well as what has happened to the world. Because I think that we are leaning towards a good time, but some bad stuff is coming in the future based upon how everything is going.
Yeah,
I would. For me, I like when Suzu couldn't go forward. I love when the time machine that Daru made was, at the time, it was only to go backwards. And one thing that this show does in particular, and how this ties into this question, is that a lot of people didn't have absolutes. Suzu had an absolute. Once you take this journey, this is it. You can go back as much as this time machine will work, but after that, you can't come forward. So every time you jump back, you're going to be stuck there. And I think one of the things that I wanted to touch on, I'm glad you mentioned this before we get too crazy and the show goes on hours and hours, which you can't, is that, you know, in the comments, replay, letting y'all know, is that a lot of things that Okurin had issues with is because he didn't do absolutes. And by not doing absolutes is like he wanted to be unsoiled by his actions. And I saw that a lot in the show. And I think a lot of people, especially when it comes to Black folks, is that when you go back in the time, you're taking your memories of your present to the past. But in reality is that when you're in the times, and I think one thing that happened with Suzu, when the machine wasn't when Daru didn't fix the time machine 100% correctly. And so when she crash landed, instead of landing similar to what she did in the beginning of the series, and she lost her memory, it was looks nice. When she lost her memory, it was that's a fire cut, by the way. I mean glassware, by the way. When she lost her memories, it was like she was so angry at herself that she literally hung herself. Like she literally committed suicide because she knew what the future was. For us, we don't quote unquote know the future, but I feel I would go back in time, but I would go back in time with absolute, that if it means me becoming the monstrosity of the time, then that's what I'll have to do, because I understand at that time it wasn't where we're at now. We don't the same freedoms that we have from the blood, sweat, and tears of our ancestors that we stand on their shoulders. It's not a matter of use your current thought process for back then, because back then you got to have an action and you got to go for it, because really the probability of you dying from going outside of the control of a Saren, which again was Suzu showed in her flash forward, not her flashback. In her flash forward, it was that if you go against what the regime is, then you're going to die. And in that time, in the United States, that's what it was. If you read, you would get some cut off, or you would get your eyes poked out. I mean, it's just it was something where you had to have an absolute. And for me, it's like my absolute. I know what my mission is, and that's where Suzu was. She knew what her mission was, so she was like, it's not even a question. I mean, I even thought that Suzu was the one that stabbed Christina, but then I mean, coming to tie on, and it's so crazy how the show is for the audience, is that literally Christina's father, our M's father, was the man giving the speech.
Yes.
Was the professor giving the speech that Okarin said, "Hey, this is
BS."
Crazy. BS, but it wasn't for her when she got stabbed. It actually wasn't the dad. It was Okarin himself that stabbed her, and the reason why he did it is because Christina wanted to save her father, even though her father was going to kill her, because she made him feel insignificant when he was the reason why she was even on the planet. And it's like, but the whole aspect of still wanting the approval, wanting the love just from that character. And so like, this is what's so crazy about this show. We literally could go from each character, like we did with Ferris and her wanting her father back. Mayushi, she just wanted to be with Okarin. She wanted to build the relationships. Now she even told him, don't jump back. Yes, I know we lost this person, but we built so many memories together. We deal with the pain. And that's another thing about this show that I'm glad we get into for the last couple of minutes, is that this show really showed people not wanting to deal with the pain of what happened. And I love the fact about time travel and the way that they made it is that you can go back and you can separate all these different branches of the multiverse. But at the end of the day, your brain, you as a species, you're one with the universe, is going to react to it. You're going to have, I mean, how many of the characters talk about the dreams that they had of their, the beta world line, not the alpha. Yeah. Like it was crazy in that sense. Go ahead.
But you know what? It made me think about that when you talked about when them having the dreams of the other timelines, right? There was a comment, and I know people talked about this on Reddit. Of course, you can get a lot of information from Reddit, but I just thought it was really interesting that someone had posed the idea that when you have a deja vu moment, right, is that a blip or a memory from an alternate universe, right? When you say to yourself, man, this feels like really deja vu, and you sit there and you think to yourself, like I've had moments where I'm sitting there and I'm watching something and everything is exactly the way it, and it's like that strong sense of like, I've been here, like, and you'll think to yourself what the person's going to say, and they say it, or what they're wearing, and they'll go do something. You're just like, it's freaky when it happens, right? And watching this anime and watching movies that have talked about this with timelines, it made me always go, I wonder if that really is the case. Like, are we really starting to see the bleed over from these other timelines, right?
Yeah.
I love it. I love where we're going.
Or did
we're
a
going
future of us, right? Or did a part of us who was trying to, not, like, oh, let me correct what I did wrong. And now you're seeing things kind of collapse on itself. And it's like, as much as we want to say, oh, that sounds like gibberish and it sounds really sci-fi, I'm thinking, we really don't know. You really don't know, right?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. That was what it made me think of.
And that, what you're getting to with that deja vu, I've had moments of deja vu multiple times. And like it's like, just like in the Steins Gate, it's like you're reliving something that you've already done. And the thing is when you see it, it also, at least for us, we can acknowledge like this really feels familiar. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like, did this already happen? Did our lives already transpire? And now we're just recycling that. And for a lot of people, they're like, well, then what is death then? And it's, again, with energy, as a scientist, energy you don't destroy anything. Whatever the energy it took to destroy something, that energy is going. Yep, exactly. It's being recycled. It's going somewhere else and coming.
They call it equivalent in exchange.
Alchemist. Yes, you don't get rid of energy. It just pretty much traverses to another place. It's always there. Even when you die, your DNA is still there. Your energy is still there. That's a whole nother conversation.
Oh, yeah, definitely is. Definitely.
I don't know, man. We got a lot of different things. When you talk about deja vu, I've felt it. I've seen it too many times where I know I've done something. And I'm talking about, I know I did it. I know I've done this, and I'm questioning, how did I get back here? And that's a legit one. And I'm sounding like Rick and Morty. How did I get here?
Right.
But yeah. But just generally, the show was deep. It was good, and it started off super slow for me. Like I told y'all, I was like, I don't know, I'm not liking this right now. But it took me a second to get into it.
Hey man, High Rise. If you got me watching High Rise,
I was gonna say,
man, if you got me watching High Rise, brother.
High Rise.
I mean, but I understand.
See, High Rise was killing people and stuff. So at least
but still, man, it was like,
you think. See, as far as I'm concerned, if you're gonna talk about a slow burn, like a real slow burn, like Steins Gate, doesn't even compare to this other one that I watched, which was Rich Hunter Robin. That is a slow.
I watched Rich. I had to turn that off.
It's so slow.
I had to turn that off.
I had to turn it off because I was like, wait a minute. I didn't turn it off. Excuse me. It cut off because the series. I don't even think the season finished. To be honest. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. I got one worse for y'all.
Yeah.
What's
Way
that?
back. You ever watch Silver Surfer, the series?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you didn't.
Yeah,
no,
and they canceled it. They canceled it. They didn't even finish out the season.
Hell no.
So that tells you that was a slow, terrible burn. The dude went from killing this or fighting this enemy and that enemy to just flying off in space and quoting Shakespearean quotes and stuff. I'm like, what's going on here? That was terrible.
You didn't get it? You didn't get it?
No, I didn't get it. I didn't get it. But I did not get it.
So deep, much wow.
We're not gonna go too crazy. I mean, as you can see, again, this is how the type of conversations that we have. We're constantly just throwing things off. Throwing things off of each other and just feeding off of what the energy is from the show, because these shows for us is like they are a telltale sign of what we think about, but we don't do. And that's one of the things why anime and my perspective, anything where you can create it mentally, you can take your mind to a level where people are thinking it, they just don't say it. And then they watch it and they're like, I was thinking that exact same thing. So this has been great. I enjoyed this. I can't wait till I get actually better on making sure I get the comments in here.
What are we doing next week?
Oh, what are we doing?
Oh, we're doing
Yasuke.
Yasuke. Look at me, I said Yasuke. Yasuke. We're gonna talk about Yasuke, but anyway, we're gonna leave that for the next episode.
I cannot wait.
This has been a pleasure. I gotta thank my co-hosts, KinkySudz, Black Bearded Nerd. Go check them out on their IGs. They got it up there. Their IGs is the exact same way as they got it. You see us scrolling down or where we at on the show. Hit us up: Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, of course. I love this. from the replay, I'm gonna definitely make sure I get some things in there that we can probably maybe squish it down a little bit, maybe take some things and start making some comments and section off the episode, like I see a lot of other YouTubers do, where like
they do
part 1, zero to 5 minutes and stuff like that. So it's been a pleasure, man. I appreciate my co-host as always. I can't wait till next Friday. I'm gonna get my camera game right, so and a little bit better lighting out here. So I'm working on that, and I love what y'all doing. Y'all got the natural light coming in. Black bearded nerd. He got the bright light. I gotta get a new LED joint. I think that's what it is.
Cool.
And the camera, of course. So hey, it's been a pleasure. Next Friday, Black Nerd Fridays is for a reason. It's in the name. Like, come on, it is what it is. We're making it happen. So I appreciate y'all. Can't wait to see y'all on Friday. Next episode.
Peace.
Peace.